On the edge of a town that remembered the sea more than it remembered itself, there stood an old clockmaker named Eli. His shop was a narrow house of brass and glass, where clocks hung like captured constellations and the tick of time seemed to breathe. People came to Eli with broken watches, heirloom clocks, and stories tied to each spring and gear. He fixed hands and faces, but what he cherished most were the quiet fragments of life that arrived with each repair. One winter morning, a girl named Mara stepped in, cheeks red from the cold, holding a small dented music box. Inside, a tiny ballerina still turned slowly, though its tune had faded into silence. Mara's eyes were older than her age, the kind that had learned to carry questions alone. "It belonged to my grandmother," she said. "She said it could find what was lost." Eli smiled and set the box on his bench. He listened to the story. A grandfather lost at sea, a family portrait that disappeared in a storm, a promise that felt heavier than memory. He wound the music box and listened to the thin, stubborn note that tried to sing. "This is more than gears," Eli murmured. "It carries an intent." He opened the box, and within, beneath the spool, he found a tiny scrap of paper folded like a secret map. On it was a single line written in a hurried hand: "Find the light that never went out." For days Eli worked. The parts were ordinary. The challenge was translation. He cleaned springs, polished the cylinder, and at last rewound the mechanism so its melody breathed clear and round. When the tune filled the shop, something else stirred. Eli's own memory long rested. He thought of the lighthouse on the cliff, the one whose lamp had been extinguished decades earlier when the town turned new and fast. Once ships had trusted that light. Once promises had been tied to its beam. Mara returned, and together they set out under a sky that tasted of salt and possibility. Their path wound through alleys and dunes, where gulls argued and children's laughter tacked like sails on the wind. The lighthouse's silhouette was a stub of shadow against the horizon, its windows like blind eyes. Inside, dust had settled in patterns of lost afternoons. The stairs creaked with a memory of many feet. At the top, the lantern room held a rusted mechanism and panes rhymed with salt. Mara placed the music box on the sill and wound it. Its tune tangled with the wind, and for the first time in years, the lighthouse listened like a sleeping thing asked to wake. Downstairs, a board shifted as if nudged by the past, revealing a narrow cavity. There, wrapped in oilcloth, lay a brass key ornate as a promise. On its bow was engraved a single word: home. Mara's hands trembled. She said the name of her grandfather, like a benediction. The key fit into a hatch at the lighthouse's base. When she turned it, the mechanism below coughed to life. Old cogs gritted and then found each other, a mirrored heart clearing its rust. Light pooled and then gathered, shy as dawn. When the lamp finally lifted and the glass caught it, the beam ran out over the sea, slow at first, then sure, cutting a bright path across black water. The town, wrapped in its newness, had forgotten how small a gesture could redraw a horizon. Fishermen paused in their nets. An old woman feeding birds at the quay lifted her face and cried because she could not name the years that had been knotted inside her. Mara sat on the cliff and listened as people stepped toward one another with questions softened into hope. Eli placed his palm against the cool brass of the music box and felt its echo of gears and years. The tune had not been magic. It had been a key to memory, a coaxing. The true wonder was simpler and truer. A light rekindled tends to find everything it was meant to guide. Mara left the lighthouse lamp burning each night until the town agreed, by small hands and loud voices, to mend the old mechanisms and watch them together. Her grandfather's photograph, found in a chest beneath loose floorboards, smiled a life into a room that had been empty for too long. Years later, children who had once watched the beam being reborn would tell the story of the music box and the key. They would say that the lighthouse didn't call only to ships, but to people who had lost their way in small, ordinary storms, and that sometimes what is lost only waits for a hand to wind it again. Eli returned to his clocks, his fingers as steady as tide. He kept the music box on his highest shelf. Whenever a stranger came in with a question about what it means to be found, he would wind it, listen to its clear, modest song, and then point toward the sea where the light kept its promise.